Blunt Cuts is a podcast fueled by creativity, curiosity, and empowerment.
We cut through the daily mess of life. This is unfiltered honesty.
Park your passive at the door. This is Blunt Cuts. Welcome to Blunt Cuts. I'm CJ. And please welcome to the studio, Ashleyn Preswicki. She is an ethical fashion activist, coordinator at Fashion Revolution Midwest, and creative director at Innovations. Welcome, Ashleyn.
Thank you, CJ. I'm really happy to be here.
It's so nice to have you here. And I know that we've connected out in space at different events, and you've hosted a few events that I've popped into. And you are really passionate about sustainability and ethical fashion, and you play such an important role in this voice of how the fashion industry is right now, where things are changing and growing, what impact we as buyers can make in this space. So I would love for you to just kind of tell a little bit more about your story, what you do, what you're working on, and kind of what brought you in today.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm humbled by that introduction. Thank you so much. I am really passionate about sustainability. I found my way to fashion as a little girl. I had always been creatively making clothing, chopping things up that I would find at thrift stores and making new things, making new fashions. And I got my first sewing machine at age 8. And that just sort of started everything in my creative space there. When I was in college, I ended up studying costume design.
Oh, very cool.
And that's where I started to really get into making and really just seeing the stories behind our clothing, what that means. And then I started to notice that there was a lot of waste. I was working as a costume shop manager and started to see how much fabric and things were just thrown away as soon as it was, used once or it was just extras. We would just naturally and so easily just toss it in the trash. And for me, coming from a background of being an environmentalist and just being really thoughtful about where things were coming from, and I questioned this, like why is this just the easiest thing for us to do?
And where is it going? Like,
right.
Okay, it's on the floor. We sweep it up. It goes in the trash can. Where does it all go? And what could have we done with that?
Right. Absolutely. The biggest question, like when you throw something away, where is away? Where does it go? And so that started my almost obsession with researching and asking more questions and getting deeper. And the more and more I asked questions, the more I realized not only costuming and theater, but fashion and clothing and the impact that it has in so many ways, from how it affects our planet and the chemical dyeing and the water usage and the human factors. And there was just so much to explore. And that's when I knew that I had to do something about it, and I haven't looked back since.
Well, thank you for that, and thanks for kind of giving us a glimpse into where and why you became so passionate about what you do. So let's talk about this here locally. What can we be doing? I know there's this big trend right now with Marie Kondo. I'd love your perspective on that. But what can people be doing?
Well, I love that you bring that up because you're right. Sustainability and fashion and all of that, it's a mindset. Our grandparents did come from a time where so many of our clothes were made here. You knew the person that made your dress. You had a relationship with them. You talked with them. You helped design it. And then you kept that piece and you took care of it and you loved it and you wore it multiple times. And that was just the way things were. And I know that now, with fast fashion and some of the ways that fashion models have changed, we have lost that. We've lost that connection to our clothing. Where is it made? Who's making it? And that's how I got really connected with Fashion Revolution, which is this global movement that is really trying to reconnect people to where their clothes are made and who makes them. Who's the face behind our clothing? Just because clothing is made around the world is not necessarily a bad thing. It's given a lot of opportunities for us in fashion, but we are just so disconnected from it.
Yeah, and as consumers, we see the magazine editorial or the model that it's being put on or fit on in like an ad or even in-store signage. Like, oh, she looks nice and sweet and she's holding a watermelon. She must care about the earth, like this idea of, and having been behind the scenes of photography and knowing that space and worked in home shopping where things are coming from all parts of the world and, and not the most sustainable ways or human focused ways as well. So just being around that environment, asking questions and wanting to know more is where it starts.
Absolutely. That is like the best place to start, is just being curious and not afraid. Just ask, or even just think about, who are the people behind these things? There are human faces behind all of the things that we own, including fashion. And fashion is an art form. It's a craft. When you think about making a dress and coming from that seamstress background, and I'm sure your grandmother and that generation, they understood the value of our clothing, that it's not just something that comes off a machine and can be thrown away. It's a beautiful piece of art. And that, I think, is the best thing that we can do, is really just value the things that we own. Even if it's not made in the most sustainable way, if you make it more sustainable by valuing it, taking care of it, keeping it longer, and treasuring it for the craft and the beautiful art piece that it is, that in itself is an act of sustainability.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. For me, when I started buying expensive things, that was my rationalization power. That was to be completely honest, I want this, $300 pair of boots, but I'm going to wear them all the time. They're made of a great quality leather. They're going to last me forever. That's why I can buy these, because they're not going to fall apart. They're going to last forever. I can keep them. That was a rationalization for me. It definitely wasn't thinking from a sustainability model necessarily. But what I've learned over these years is it's almost more important for me to buy, if I'm buying a fast fashion piece, if I'm buying something at the Targets of the world, we all love it, we all do it. If I'm doing that, it's more important that I use that $20 piece for as long as it humanly can, that I do something with it after, if I'm not wanting it anymore, that I'm getting it into a thrift store, into somebody else's hands, because this idea of fast fashion and perpetuating this waste cycle of, it's not as durable as those expensive leather shoes or that handmade thing I have through a maker. So I have that, now I have a new outlook on when I'm buying things from makers, that I'm part of someone's story and journey. So for me, it's a sustainability thing, but it's also like I am making that person's day. They're having a happy dance if I buy this from them. Target is not having a happy dance if I purchase something from them on a whim. Mm-hmm. But I've stopped kind of purchasing and using my dollar on a whim. And I'm not going to stop buying fast fashion. I'm not. It's just like I have to for my industry. Like I'm not personally like ready to stop doing that, but I have made more of a conscious effort of, I need to keep this for longer, or I need to make sure that I'm not just buying this, wearing it for a week and letting it go.
I think there are a lot of ways that you can approach it, and I appreciate that you know where you stand on certain things, and really making your fashion choices fit you and fit your values. And I think that's one of the best things that we can do is just sort of assess where you are and what you can do. You can't do everything. You can't buy the most perfect, sustainable, zero waste, organic cotton, everything. That's just not possible. But looking at starting where you're at and what you can do. And I think you nailed it when you said you're wearing someone's story. Mm-hmm.
That's the part that I can resonate with.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful opportunity to be able to say, when someone is like, oh, I really love your dress, and you can smile and say like, yes, this person made it and I got it from here and it has this beautiful story and this beautiful memory, rather than just being like, oh, I got it really cheap at Target. That doesn't mean anything anymore. And if you can give your clothing meaning, you can love it and make it last longer. And what a beautiful thing to be able to share is the person behind the thing.
So, how do you feel trends impact fast fashion and sustainability? Like, how do you feel about trends, things coming and going, popular one minute, gone the next? How do you feel this impacts this space, and what can we do differently or thinking about trends?
Yeah, I think actually trends have been one of the biggest culprits in how quickly clothing comes in and out of our lives. And this whole fast fashion model is built on trying trends. And I think it started in a good place of being able to allow young people to explore their fashion and find their voice and find their expression. But it is multiplied into every space. When we used to have just a couple different lines every year to, there's a different trend every week. And I think for us, really taking the time to learn who you are and find what your style is, what your expression is, and take that time to learn that and then buy accordingly. And that's okay. And so I think rather than treating it like I'm trying one thing on and then throwing it away, if you really just take the time to develop yourself and your style, you'll be more thoughtful with your purchasing. And I think what is really exciting right now is that as consumers or as general citizens who purchase and love fashion, finding your expression and your style and making it your own and just sort of ignoring what's trendy. I think we have that ability right now in fashion because we can see so much on Instagram that you really just make your own style. And I love that.
If you're someone that likes to express with the trends and you're really into kind of what's going on in those spaces, I think for me, I recently, within the last 2 years, capsule closeted, and I really love having, and what that is I have 40 pieces in my personal closet, mostly black, white, and gray. And everything goes together. No matter if I'm getting dressed in the dark, my tops are on one level, my bottoms are on another level, and my one pieces are in a section. So like I can grab anything and it all goes together. And I designed that in a very cohesive way, mostly because I was having anxiety getting dressed in the morning. It was taking me too long. I was worrying about like how my outfits were looking. I'm out in the public eye as a stylist. I had this complex of like, I need to be creative in my outfits every day. And I've really learned that having kind of a uniform of such has made me more creative in other areas because I don't have to use that headspace to think about what I'm wearing. I know everything in my closet I love. So then when there are trends or different things popping up, I can add on to that through either accessories or different pieces that I can add on, but I have a really clean palette to add to. So I find bringing in accessories has been a great way for me to leverage trends. And I find a lot of accessories at thrift stores. So I will go out and find someone else's discarded piece that didn't bring them joy, which I need to get into this with you. But like what that means to me is I can go out and maybe that's a fast fashion piece, but at a thrift store where it's saving it from a landfill. Like I'm in the intermediate area where I can grab it before it's gone. You can go into a thrift store and find any trend that just happened today. So it's not that idea that it never existed before. It's just it's being repackaged or re-Instagrammed or purchased in a different way, repurposed and shown to the world. Like this is now the new thing, even though vinyl clear bags have been around since I was in middle school. I look at those things like I had those things. It's all a cycle, So.
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity in thrift and the secondhand market. We're seeing more and more people doing that as their shopping, as their number one shopping choice. There's so many options, ThredUp and your local consignment shops and thrift stores, and they're doing a really great job at curating those pieces that people want. And so you can find things that have never been worn. And I think just knowing that that's an option for you, if you've never explored that before because you have this idea of what it is, I would encourage everyone to explore a consignment shop or ThredUp or online secondhand shopping. There's so many options for things that have never been loved and have never gotten the opportunity to be worn. And I would love to see those things be people's number one choice, is like, how do I buy something that already exists rather than something new first? So looking at that as that option first.
Yeah, a super good point. And then getting back to kind of this Marie Kondo idea of, cleansing your space and only keeping the things that bring you joy. So right now is a huge time in which thrift stores are full, which us thrifters love. But let's talk about that. I do think there is something. I mean, I know I found happiness in reducing the amount of things in my closet, but then that's also provided me to buy from local makers and those sorts of things, because then those 40 pieces in my closet, my budget can be reallocated to 40 things versus 150, however many things I had before. Probably way too many. So, but let's talk about that. Purging. Like, how do you purge thoughtfully? And when we're purging, what does this affect? And kind of talk to us about the cycle of clothes. Where does it come from? Who makes it? How does it end up where it ends up? And then when we decide to get rid of it, like, what is that cycle of life?
Yeah, the cycle of clothing right now is really challenging. I personally haven't figured out exactly how I feel about the Marie Kondo purge. In some ways, like you've mentioned, having things that bring you joy, only keeping the things close to you that you really value is really important. I think it is good for the soul. It's good for, being mindful. But I think something to be really thoughtful about is, what do you do with those pieces that you are purging? And when you are thinking about buying new things, or if you do end up deciding to bring new things into your life, being really thoughtful about that before you buy. And so looking at the things that you are getting rid of, I think asking yourself, what quality are they in? Would I give these to a friend? And, starting there, maybe starting with like a clothing swap. So you are giving those things directly to people that will wear them, they'll be valued and worn many times and continue to extend the life. And then looking at donations and thrifting, like, can you donate them to a women's shelter or a Dress for Success or a nonprofit first? Because I think our thrift stores right now, while they love all of these donations and that is part of their business model, a lot of them can't handle all of the things that are coming in, even before this Marie Kondo phenomena. And now it's even more than ever before. I think Goodwill spends like $7 million just getting rid of things that they can't sell.
Yeah, I mean, I've walked up to thrift stores before. I mean, I live in Burnsville, so I've Unique, and they have a compressor they compress everything, and you can kind of see it there in bundles, and it is daunting to see a giant brick of fabric.
Yeah, the brick sometimes will either go to landfills, be incinerated, or be shipped to third party markets in Africa or the Indies. And a lot of them don't want our clothing anymore. Sometimes they do. And sometimes that can be really valuable for their culture and their economics. But at the same time, we're just doing it at such a rate that it's just too much. There's too much waste. There's valuable clothing that never gets worn. And never sees its true value and its true form. And so I think as we're purging and as we're, giving breath and space into our own lives, thinking about the impact of those, where it's going, is really, it's a lot to think about. And so
it is like you feel like you're cleansing your own life. You're finally at peace. But if you really think about where are these things going, how is this impacting the environment in which our children and grandchildren will grow up in? How and where is this impacting countries that we ship our stuff off to because we don't want our waste? Like, that's emotional. That's a heavy journey when I decide to just purge because I want an empty, clean space again.
Right. And so it's okay to do that, but also know when you're bringing new things into your life, thinking about where they're going to go.
The whole cycle, like, what I'm buying this, but where will it end up?
Right. And there are types of fashion that are starting to think about the end cycle. I know local brands here, Winsome Goods, for example, they will take back their own product when you are done with it, or it no longer works for you, or it has a tear in it, and they will properly recycle it or ensure that it has a new life. And so we're seeing those business models
Yeah,
appearing.
it's great. It would be great to hear more of those stories, because I think that that's not always at the forefront of that space. And I know especially millennial consumers are very informed and want to be informed and are making some of the impacts that maybe generations before haven't. So I think now really is the time to focus on those stories of those makers that are thinking about that and that may determine a buying decision, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There are so many like smaller brands, and I love being able to work with these smaller brands or these emerging designers, student designers that are encouraged to start thinking about, how am I designing something better from the beginning, whether that's thinking about how much excess fabrics are coming off of the cuts on the table. What is the fabric? What are they made out of? Do they have plastic in the fabric themselves? And thinking about all of those pieces as they're designing, so that at the end of the cycle of the clothing's lives, it can go back to an original form or back to this idea of circularity. And I think small brands are starting to do that, and really asking themselves deeper questions. And I think because they're smaller brands, they have that ability to work with their own product.
Right. They know exactly where they're sourcing their materials, where those fabrics are coming from, where those fabrics are being made,
Mm-hmm.
and then how they're making and distributing in their own channels.
And I would encourage people that are buying to ask those questions. Like, ask your brands, direct message them on Instagram. They will respond, and hopefully they'll respond with honesty and transparency that they can't do everything, but like these are the things that they are doing, and really starting to support the brands that are doing that. And ask bigger brands, ask your targets, who made my clothes?
Mm-hmm.
What's happening to them afterwards? Like, what do I do? And the more that brands can take responsibility for those types of things, the less it takes off the citizen to do all the work.
Yeah, and it's hidden under some corporate sustainability button on websites. Like, the information is very high level there. But yeah, ask questions, and mostly ask yourself when you're purchasing something, where is this going to go? I think that's a great starting point. So good point on all of that. From the perspective of buying from local makers, I think that's such a great opportunity, but I also think that's a privilege and a luxury. And so for people that I think now talking through this a little bit, you can understand why local makers or small batch fashion has some cost associated with it, more than what you would see off the rack in your department store or your fast fashion space. It's just due to all of these things we're talking about: picking the right fabrics, making sure that they've decided that this is coming from a place that they feel great about, that man hours, it's usually like a one woman shop or a small seamstress team, working locally. But why is fast fashion so affordable? And, I think accessible in that sense of, I have a limited budget per month and I love fashion. So how do we talk to that buyer? Because I think that's a lot of our buyers, right?
Absolutely. And I think the beautiful thing about reshaping the fashion industry is that we all love fashion. So let's make it a tool and a force for good. We have a responsibility in it, but also brands have a responsibility as well. And so thinking about the fast fashion buyer, there are so many opportunities to look at, how are you being creative with your fashion? How are you outfit repeating and using that as an opportunity to showcase your creativity? How are you using thrift or secondhand options and integrating that? Like, that's very affordable. Once a clothing item is purchased, it automatically goes down in price. Even if you were to resell it, even if you were to let it go into a thrift market, the price of that is already dropped. And so you can find those brand new things for next to nothing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think shifting your dollars to looking at what are my other options, even if you want to move fashion more quickly through your closet, how are you looking at a Buffalo Exchange, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're moving clothing really quickly, but it's always very trendy. You can resell your things to them on a regular basis and just kind of maybe creating a different mindset with that same fast fashion budget.
Yeah, and I think rentals too is a cool space because this idea of being able to rent things like higher end things at about the monthly budget of what honestly walking into a Target and you buying 4 or 5 things a month, it really budget wise, and you're being able to change out with the trends without impacting. And hopefully, I don't know the huge model structure behind those sorts of businesses, but I'm hoping those pieces are getting multiple wears. I'm hoping that they're being run through the channels in all the right ways so that we're hopefully saving some of that impact.
Yeah, rental's a great avenue. And even if you think of the rental, look at the women in your circle. Look at what they're wearing, and is there a closet sharing model that you can create with your friends, your local style queens that you love.
Yeah,
and
right.
admire.
Pull back. I mean, I know that I rent out a lot of my styling wardrobe just because it's there, and I'm like, why wouldn't I want somebody to use this at a party or whatever it may be? I mean, it's just there. It's not bringing anyone joy if it's not on a shoot. So let's use it and take good care of it. But let's get it out there.
Absolutely. Like
cool.
Having, we all have those set of beautiful dresses for those fancy occasions. Like borrow from your best friend. Like switch things out and get creative and use your style with their piece and do that as well. I think there's a lot of options. We've just been so conditioned and used to this fast fashion model that we can just go in and buy immediately, that we just haven't taken the time to slow down and just try something else.
So I love this idea of rallying with your girlfriends and getting together and sharing. And I know that specifically for me and for Blunt Cuts, this has been such an important time for women and women in our lives. And I'm all about supporting other women and what they're doing. And I hope that rings clear. But it matters to me. And I think women's stories specifically matter to me. So in this world of a woman's story, I mean, it all starts with women.
Absolutely. I think fashion is driven by women. And if you identify as a feminist, you empower all of the women with your fashion choices, not just your friends and yourself, but also the women who make our clothing. I think 80% of garment factory workers and people that are touched by the fashion industry as a whole are women. And so this is a women's issue. This is a women's movement. And how do we empower not only ourselves with our fashion choices, but all of the women that are affected by it?
I know. I want to read more stories. I crave more stories about women that are making, garments in other parts of the world. And I crave knowing where they are and what their days are like and what their lives are like. And I know that I've seen it on the high fashion end of things. And there have been some great documentaries about women who are working in ateliers and that space. And it's draining work, but, it's powerful, impactful work because they're working on one garment for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
So that idea. But, how does someone feel when they're in poor working conditions and really long days and hours to churn out $15 shirts?
Yeah, I think going back to like your craving for finding those stories, if you look on the Fashion Revolution website and on their Instagram, their goal is to open these stories of who makes our clothes. And there's so many amazing brands that are willing to share the people behind the things, especially women around the world.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to H&M, and they've had some poor choices, both made from just general lack of awareness and understanding of humans and other parts of the world, minus their like small European nation. But I think that this idea of people who are making the clothes sewing in like help me notes, really seeing a story like that resonates on an entirely different level of I haven't been able to shop there in quite some time. But yeah, those things cement home more reasons in which I can't walk into there, and just the privilege and racial connotations and all the mistakes that they've made. This is not a PR thing. This is a humans making other things, and you're not thinking about the other humans around you, or that the world is much bigger than your bubble. So that's your choice, and you made those active choices and put it out in a giant marketplace. So stand up and take some responsibility because you fucked up.
Yeah, that, and then on us as the people that are purchasing, how are we asking those brands to do better? And also asking ourselves, is this piece of fashion empowering me and empowering the woman who made it? Because purchasing something that empowers you yet exploits another woman is not an act of feminism. And I really encourage all of us to think about and ask deeper questions like, who is impacted by this fashion that I'm purchasing, and how do I make it one of power and empowerment, and not only showcasing my expression and my creativity, but my values.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get home and talk to my 9-year-old about like all of this, because if we don't start with our children and we don't start kind of explaining and talking to them about things, right, we're just going to keep perpetuating. So I don't know, it just excites me to do better and to really think about the women behind everything. So with that said, what parting ways can we give, lessons learned that we can pass along to people listening on, what they can do and where they can get started?
Absolutely. I think the number one thing that I always try to remind myself and anyone that asks is, don't do nothing because you can't do everything. Obviously, from our conversation, the fashion industry has a lot of issues, and it's really, really massive. But looking at understanding your values and what you care most about, start there. Just ask some questions, whether that's, I care about the women that are making my things. I care about how much water is put into my, shirt, or whatever it is. Finding your values within that and just starting there.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, you've shaped my thinking today. I mean, I think I started the episode with like, I'm not going to stop buying fast fashion because it's there and it's easy and I need things occasionally. But you've really shifted my thinking, and that's good. And I mean, and I was already a little shifted in my thinking, but this is good. I think the women piece really touches my heart, and I can make better choices. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today. Where can people follow you or find you?
I would suggest taking a look at the Fashion Revolution Midwest Instagram, or you can find me and all of the work that I'm doing under my tag at Miss Ashleyn on Instagram.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again, Ashleyn, for being here. And let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find us all at Blunt Cuts Podcast.